Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you consume your media. Welcome to Run It Back, episode number 79. You guys got to forgive me. I took last week off, so I'm a little bit out of rhythm with my normal beginnings here. Welcome to Run It Back. As I said, I'm your host, Menelik Fernandez. This is episode number 79. The premise of this show remains the same, where we take teams that have played previously and we run it back, so to speak, where we talk about what worked, what didn't, how we prepared, style of play, what would we do differently if we were to do the same game over, and just all those fun things that coaches love when we sit around the round table, sit around the hot stove, whatever you want to talk about. uh, for many episodes now, I've been very fortunate to have coaches from the games join us. And today is no different. So today we are exploring Holy Family versus Huntington, which is a November 16th, 2020 game. This is going back a little bit, obviously. And I'm pleased to have my good buddy, my friend, Brandt Danals, joining us today, who was the head coach at the time of Holy Family, has now moved on. Brandt, if you give me a second, I'm going to try to do you justice with a warm welcome, of course, to the show.
Appreciate it.
Brandt is currently at North Alabama. He's been there since September of 2020 as the director of basketball operations. He spent 2 years with Holy Family as the athletic director and head coach of the men's basketball team. He also spent 5 years at Indiana Tech as an assistant coach and a head coach on the women's tennis side. Then spent a couple of years prior to that at Crestview High School as the head coach of the men's basketball team. And as I mentioned, is a buddy of mine, somebody I talk to almost every day for the past year and a half, I'd say almost 2 years. If I don't hear one snowplow in here today, I'm going to be very upset. I had to throw it in there. But Brandt is a great mind, phenomenal with graphics, unbelievable on a board, X and O wise, just really, really happy. I don't know how this managed to take me 79 episodes to get you on, but brother, I'm happy you're here. I'm excited to sit down with you.
I'm probably still too early in the list of guests if you're going in order of how much people know when they're on the show. But no, I appreciate you having me on. I know just being away from the floor now for a while, I feel like, I'm obviously at basketball every day, but in a little bit different role. So it's kind of been nice to dive back into some of the stuff we did at Holy Family and just the memories it brought back up watching the game this morning as I was kind of piecing my way through it.
Yeah,
So
when I met
I'm
you, you were
excited, man.
there. When I met you, you were there just at the tail end. Sort of set the stage for us. Take us back a little bit. Give us a little bit of background of the league that you play in, where you are in the season in the November month, who Huntington is, what the game means, all that fun stuff, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no doubt. So, Holy Family, when I got there, was in their transition from the USCA to the NAIA. And unfortunately, the school has since closed their doors due to budget things. But we were able to make some pretty good traction in, the beginning stages of the guys we were able to bring in. And into year two, we had some pretty high expectations going in. And early in the season, we ended up playing, our first 14 games without our All-American point guard, Thomas. And unfortunately, Huntington here was one of those games. And Huntington is now still and was at the time kind of one of the premier NAI programs. They're in the Crossroads Leagues in Indiana. And Coach Platt was the coach at the time. He's since retired, and he did a really good job. His son was a phenomenal player, and as you'll see in these clips, he torched us for about 50. So, big game for our guys every year. We played in the Classic both years I was there. Coach Moore at Grace College does an awesome job with his guys. And they were able to give us a little bit of a guarantee to come down and play in that Classic every year. If you've never been to Grace College, they have in my opinion, one of the best facilities in small college basketball.
It's beautiful for sure.
And really cool town on the lake, and they do a lot of really good stuff there. Their team is really talented as well. So having spent 5 years, I think, in NAI basketball in Indiana, I had an idea of the level you need to get your program to in the NAI to be able to compete. And right. I think we were on our way there. It was sad to see it get cut short, but we had actually a really exciting 2 games in this tournament, knowing that in year 1, both of these teams ran us out of the gym, to turn around in year 2 and be able to play competitive games that, barring a couple silly mistakes and stuff that we hurt ourselves with in the game, realistically could have had a chance to be right there at the end. So if I look distracted, it's because my little daughter just joined us here. And
That's all right. That's all right. Listen, I always make the joke that my daughter is a regular guest on this show, so happy to have her, and no worries about daddy duties at all on the side there. Completely understandable. So let's move into your scouting process. You mentioned, obviously, year 1 to year 2 has been a big change in terms of the performance while you're there. When do you start to scout? How many games out are you watching? What makes your scout? What's that format look like?
When I was at Holy Family, it's a little different. Our staff size was just me and the assistant. So I was a big believer at the time of not starting a scout until we finished the game before. So I wanted to get everything done and move on. And it's a little bit different on a weekend like that when you're playing a classic. Obviously, I would watch the team we play on day 2, and we might hit something in practice, on Monday or Tuesday early in the week that the guys don't necessarily know is for the Saturday team, but it is as part of a package of practice. But in terms of what I watch, I like to look at their 5 most recent games. And especially if I can find a team that I know plays a similar style to us. That's really kind of what I'm looking for in that, and breaking that down, seeing how they guard actions that I know we run, how they're going to guard ball screens, how are they going to, guard our stagger screens and that type of stuff we do. And then obviously the majority of our scout was based on, how are we going to guard them? And we broke that down in practice. I think in order to have your guys ready, you got to have a complete understanding yourself on your own weaknesses and where people might attack you and what matchups they might exploit and how you can minimize those things in order to give your guys the best opportunity to win. So, I spent a lot of time on it. The guys get basically just personnel and some keys to win, and try to keep it as simple as possible for them in terms of what 3 things do we need to do against this player, and how do we label them? And for us, in terms of labeling, it was how do we label the closeout? So, I felt like we did a pretty good job with that type of stuff. And our guys, once they got the hang of it in year 2, especially, this just became a normal part of our preparation. And obviously you're watching film with them and all that stuff. But for me, it was, I wanted to make sure myself going into the game that unless they put a new play in, I didn't want to see something during the game that I didn't feel like I already had our guys prepared for. So
I want to ask you about the delivery and the process, but before I get to that, you said something that kind of piqued my interest. You mentioned of the actionable stuff that you put in, you really like to focus on how to close out. What would that look like specifically for you guys? What would be the different things? Like, do you attach names like, oh, that's a Rondo close, or that's a Curry close, or whatever?
Rondo, George, and Curry. And I think, just having simple identifiers for those for each guys. You allow your players to, when we're switching in our 15 and all that type of stuff, to know, okay, am I switched on George or Curry or whatever? And then just asking the guys as part of your delivery to them, I'm a big believer that the players got to lead the team. So I put a lot of onus on that for our guys to understand that type of stuff. And if I asked them at breakfast on the day of the game, hey, what's number 15? And, I expected them to know, oh, coach, he's a Curry. We're running him off the line or whatever it might be.
Interesting. How would you teach those 3 closes in like the beginning of the season? And then how would you reinforce them throughout the season?
For sure. So we taught them one at a time. So 4-on-4 closeouts is how we did it. You just have 4 guys start, around the block area, and a guy on each wing and a guy in the slot up top. And always teach George's first. So I think, you're sprinting to it, breaking down about 3/4 of the way with 2 high hands and into your stance. And for those of you watching, a George for us is a capable shooter, but not a knockdown guy that we're necessarily trying to run off. And then you got, after that, we put in our rondos, and lastly, we put in curries. I think early in the season and in the NAIA is different because you've got 24 weeks with your guys on the floor where you can teach stuff. Well, closeouts, you can teach without a ball. So we would start that type of stuff early in the year in our conditioning stuff. And then you just hit on it once a week, maybe. It's a quick drill, 2 or 3 minutes a day. We hit on it once or twice a week. By the time you get to games, if you're hitting it hopefully once a week, you're in pretty good shape. So, just reinforcing it with our guys. I think by year 2, our guys had a really good grasp on the different types of closeouts. And we did a drill 5-on-4. It's a live drill that you're kind of in a scramble the whole possession where, they're really hitting different closeouts because they're guarding different guys on our own team through the course of that drill, which is really for me a closeout drill and a rotation drill all in one. That's not just a simple breakdown drill because it's live. I think the guys like that type of stuff. Typically, at least, they're more engaged in something competitive than they are a breakdown drill. And there's definitely spots for breakdown drills, but the more you can do where they're getting after it, I think the better it sticks with them.
Love it. So let's go back to the actual scout. What's the delivery like? So you mentioned your staff is small. It's just you and the one assistant.
Sure.
You're taking on the majority of the stuff, I'm assuming. Do you then deliver it to him first, and then both of you are presenting to the guys? And then when you are presenting to the guys, what does that look like? Is it film plus paper? Is it more weighted towards the sets or more weighted towards the personnel? All that fun stuff.
Yeah, no doubt. My assistant Kyle was really, really good. So we shared a lot of information with each other in the process of making the scout. So he would really have a good understanding of it by the time we ever even got to it with the guys. I think that was the biggest part, was us being on the same page with the scout by the time we ever hit the floor at practice with the guys. I think the delivery for them 3 days out from the game, we would start, if possible, obviously prep. Let's say perfect world, 3 days out from the game, right? We have practice. So
right.
Before they ever hear anything personnel on the other team, in our defensive breakdown segment practice, and we did this every single day. I was at Holy Family. We would do our 4-on-4 shell, which was just kind of our ABCs of our program, things that we did every day. Well, then it would go into a 12-minute defensive breakdown segment where I would have one end of the floor, my assistant would have the other end of the floor, and we're working on an action that we know we're going to need to guard well in the upcoming game, whether that's guarding a stagger, guarding a side ball screen, guarding pick roll replace, whatever it is.
Right.
So they get that. That's the first piece of the delivery of the scout for me. Then day 2, they get film and personnel before practice. And then the same type of thing in day 2, breakdown, probably the same as the day before, maybe a different wrinkle if there is one.
And sorry, just before you move on, what would that film part look like? What would go into that, and how long would it be?
Yeah, so day 1 of film for me before practice would strictly be personnel clips before practice.
Right.
Try to have 3, 4, 5 clips per guy, depending on their importance level to the team. Sometimes a couple more, sometimes a couple less. And I'd go through everybody that they're going to see on the scout. So if there's 10 guys on the scout, there's going to be 10 guys on the clips every time they see it. So after practice on the first day is the first time that they would see sets of, or whatever, action, usually main action, not so much sets. After practice, 5 to 7 minutes, no more. Tried to never keep my guys in a super long film session that wasn't based on us. We would have long film sessions. They would all be on self-improvement, not so much focusing on the other team, just because, obviously I'm not a great coach, but I think I think like if you're going to be a good basketball team, what you do matters so much more than what the other team does. And if you can run your stuff well, if you can guard well to your principles, if you can execute your stuff no matter what defense you're going to see, I think you have a lot higher chance of success than if you spend, all your time in the week on the other team. So that was kind of my approach to film as well. So.
And then you were at the end. I'm sorry that I interjected. You were at the end of, say, day 2. Day 3, what are you moving into process-wise?
Yeah, day 3, for me, day before game, all right, really hard practice for about 50 minutes to an hour tops, and with a 20-minute walkthrough at the end of their 2 main actions, their 2 favorite sets, and their 2 favorite baseline out of bounds plays. Strictly walkthrough on those, flipping both. 20-minute session, half court, live against their 2 main actions, flipping where we're on defense. And, we did this thing called Kent State defense. I'm an Ohio guy, so I named it Kent State defense, but it's start with a free throw, stop, score, stop is what you got to do to get a point. And that day before game is besides our 5-on-0 session towards the beginning, pretty much the only offense we would do the day before game besides some shooting stuff. So, but kind of fit to our transition style and some of the sets we ran, so it worked well for us.
Now I'm curious because I do the same thing, but why in the practice immediately before a game are you shorter duration and harder intensity? What's the motivation behind that?
Yeah, I want to get their heart rate up still high for a short period of time, and I want to protect their legs as well in the same process. So it goes kind of to keeping them in shape and also to keeping their mind fresh. And I think like you can get away with a short, low intensity practice before practice. A lot of really good coaches do that. But I think it's got to fit, the mindset and the culture of your program. So if you're an attack, high energy guy and all that, and then you scale it back the day before game, right? And I'm a high energy guy with the guys. I don't think it works. So for me, I was high energy. I'm going to be high energy really, really fast. The guys know we're going to get in and going to get out. And it's typically those practices are pretty crisp. And I think the guys can appreciate that because practice slows down at the end. And it's literally a 50% walkthrough, making sure we know how to guard the action and how are we going to do this? Are we going to side switch the saggers and all that? Making sure we're all on the same page when we leave that. So the 45 to 50 minutes before that for me need to be high energy, get to the next thing, get in and get out.
I personally find that it helps with focus too, right? Even if it gets a little messy in that 45, 50 minutes, whatever.
Yeah.
Because you're going so hard, the intensity levels up, you're more focused, you're more willing to take in knowledge after all that. It's my personal belief.
No doubt.
So then paper scout wise, what are you giving your guys? How long? What goes on it? You did mention you sort of quiz them. How often will you do that in an ideal world?
They're getting 3 pages. So they're getting starters on 1 page, bench on another page, and keys to the game, offense and defense, and a brief summary. I'm talking 5 bullet points of how they play. So
right.
Usually 4 keys, 4 on offense, 4 on defense, 5 things of how they play, and then personnel. Day 1, I deliver the whole thing, give it to them, read it to them. Day 2, they read their matchup. Say, Byron's our point guard in this game, right? Byron, you're guarding number 21, Fetters. Read me his stuff, and he's reading it to the team. So, and then by day 3, they might not even have their paper with them at that point in film, and I might just ask him, okay, Byron, how we guarding him? Might not be he's a right-hand driver, he's getting to the rim really well. No, it might be, we're there on the catch, box out, don't let him beat us in transition, whatever it is for our 3 keys. And I think that's probably what worked well the most for us. A lot of times on short turnaround, they didn't even get the 3rd page. They would simply get the 2 personnel pages. We played Friday, Saturday a lot that year. We were in the independent Association of Independent Institutions in the NAI at the time. Right. So, that year we played all the way from Kansas to over in Ohio and everywhere in between. So the Friday, Saturday games, I think make the delivery to your guys a little bit different. And I thought on the short turnarounds, especially the personnel is a little bit more important. So really drilling that home. But yeah, perfect world. That's kind of the delivery in terms of what the guys get. I like to keep it short. I'm not a big, hide the scout from the other team. I send it as a PDF to our dudes on their phone. I think that's the way that this generation loves to communicate now, is on their
I would
cell
agree.
phone. So
Yeah.
just delivering it to them in a way that they're always going to have it in their pocket. They're going to be more apt to look at it and all that stuff. So that was just the way I preferred to do it.
Love it.
And you save the environment.
Yeah,
Kill
of
those
course.
trees,
I think
right?
that's really what you're all about at the end of the day, of course.
Yeah.
So a player like Platt puts up 44 on you on 28 shots. What, if anything, are you doing differently for a guy that's that capable, that much of a star? Do you spend an extra few minutes? Are you a believer of like, let's take away one person and make the rest of the team beat us? What's your philosophy on that?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of our thinking going into that game. Obviously, Middlesworth and Platt were their two best players. And I think when you have a shooter as good as Platt, you obviously want to never let him get an in rhythm three. And we didn't do a great job of that with Platt. Now, I think we did do a decent job of making him work for his 44. But, I don't think you want to go crazy and just give other dudes open shots the whole game. So you want to make life as difficult as you can on their best player, but still stick to your principles with everybody else if you can. And, a wrinkle that we were able to throw in with the style we played is no catch at times if you want, to really try to make it difficult on him getting the ball. I think when that player is the point guard, it becomes a little bit more difficult to make sure that happens. Sure. But yeah, I wrestle with that, I guess. I try not to change our principles just because when I got there, those were the things we hit home from or hit hard on day one to the day I left. And I think, if you're going to be successful, you're going to upset teams you're not supposed to beat, you got to stick to your identity and hope that you're really good at it. And I think ultimately, we didn't necessarily see it in this game. But to go in halftime tied at 45 and really play with them for most of the second half, I think kind of speaks to the progress we made from year one to year two and sticking to that kind of, thinking of we are who we are and we're just going to try to be who we are to the best of our ability. And, your best might be better than our best right now, but we're going to try to make sure you get our best look.
So following that line of thought, ball screen or off ball screen coverages, you are more of a proponent of we're going to do what we do well and you don't really switch it game to game based upon personnel?
Yeah, I mean, we had 4 different ways we guarded a ball screen. We either, caught or soft hedge, whatever, contain, whatever, hard hedge, switch, or under. And so all 4 of those were built into our package and all of them are personnel based. And we might switch those in the course of a game if we're getting torched in one coverage or we saw a wrinkle we weren't expecting to see. But, those were our 4 coverages. So those were our 4 options going into the game. And I wasn't going to throw something in at my guys that they hadn't ever seen, especially on the defensive end. Now, drawn up a out of time or whatever.
Icing in the middle of the game, halfway through the season.
I'm not going to ice if they've never seen it. So, trying to just be really good. I think you got to limit what you're trying to be really good at. Obviously, you can't be really good at everything. So for us, we picked 3 to 4 things we wanted to try to be really good at in our coverages. And those are kind of what we lived and died by.
Love it. The things like how many to the glass on offensive rebounding or pace of play.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about those. Are those also things that you would have if there's a spectrum and at one end is I'm going to be good at everything just a little bit, or at the other end of the spectrum, I'm highly specialized in doing what I do. You're still kind of leaning towards that side on those things?
Yeah, I think for us, offensive rebounding, I've always been a 4 to the glass guy. I think
why is that? That's an interesting one. I like that.
Yeah. So I try to send 4 guys to the glass because inevitably, right, you don't always actually get 4 guys to the glass. You might 50% of your possessions, right?
Right.
If you're telling them, hey, I need 4 guys to the glass, but one of your guys that's supposed to be crashing might be the guy that's shooting, and then so you don't always actually get it. So if you say 3 guys to the glass, well, then inevitably you're probably only getting 2 or maybe 50% of your possessions. So I think loading it up on that, you increase your opportunity to get offensive rebounds. And I think that worked well for us. And I think at the NAI level, high level of basketball, right? But not as high as, some of the higher levels, if you're being brutally honest. And I love the NAI as much as everybody. I coached in it for, 8 years, but there's just not as good a players as there are at some other levels across the board. There are some that stand out, obviously, but the depth of the talent allows you to kind of send more dudes to the glass and take your chances in transition on defense and be able to do some different things there. So, I just think like trying for us being one of the teams not nearly as talented as a lot of teams were playing most of the time, we tried to really maximize our possessions. So if we weren't going to shoot as great of a percentage as you always need to, I wanted to make sure that we were giving ourselves every opportunity to get more attempts at the basket by getting offensive rebounds.
And following that line of thought, I'm assuming you're trying to play fast and deflect the ball more to get more possessions as well.
For sure. And I think 2 reasons for that. The guys I've worked for all play that style. So I kind of adopted that style. I played that style in college, which is weird because I played Princeton all of high school and when I was a high school coach. And then but I think kids like to play that style. They enjoy playing that style. They obviously enjoy winning, which I think should be everyone's priority over style of play. But I think it makes it easier if you can win when you're playing fast to recruit and to be able to bring kids in a style that they like to play. I think it makes practice a little bit easier to be high energy. I think just the style we played on defense, trying to be disruptive and play fast and get up in people and, the style of player we were looking to bring into our program, I think being a really demanding coach on the defensive end, which I felt like I was. And I think my guys, if you watched the practice, especially in the preseason, they would tell you I was really hard on them on that end of the floor. And I think you got to reward them in turn with a little bit of freedom on the other end of the floor. So, and that's kind of my philosophy there. I think you can be really demanding. I don't know if you can be extremely demanding in everything that you do, but I think if you give them the freedom to make mistakes in some areas while being really demanding in other areas, the guys respond to that really well, or have for me at least.
Love it. And then as far as like in game, what are you tracking? Like what do you have your assistant doing? And how, I gotta phrase this right. Sorry. How open are you to go away from your game plan if your game plan from, say, like your scout isn't working? Like when do you call the audible, so to speak, type deal?
So for me, in that tracking wise, the small staff, it's difficult. We obviously track turnovers and we tracked assists and we tracked substitution. We tried to stick to our rotation for the most part on the bench. I think for me, that's the first place I turn if things aren't working is the lineups. Are we playing the right guys?
Right.
For our, game plan to work. Now, if we try multiple lineups and then we try multiple lineups again and it doesn't work, well then shit, I probably didn't have a very good plan going in. And I think that's part of the accountability piece. And being a coach, you got to be afraid to not own when you're wrong, especially to the team. And I think, changing it in the midst of a half can be really difficult, especially in college basketball here, as fast as it goes in small college without medias and all that type of stuff. So being able to regroup at halftime was really important for me and Kyle, and me being able to get his honest opinion. And, sometimes I might tell him to F off and not like his opinion, but sometimes I might tell him that, but I'm hearing him and I might, just be frustrated in the moment and take it to heart in the course of the game. And he was good at that. I told Kyle no a million times, and he never kept bringing different ideas to the table. I think that's an underrated skill for assistants, and is being able to be told no and reframing your idea in a way that makes your boss say yes, or makes him see it in a different light, or sometimes makes him feel like it's his idea. And I think Kyle was good at that. And I think just being flexible with your guys. I think, it's easy as a coach to let your ego get in the way and think, man, this is the game plan to beat these guys. And it might be, but it might not be the game plan to beat those guys on that specific day. So are you flexible enough to make the changes to give your team every opportunity to win when you can?
Sounds like Colin might have a promising law degree in his future as well.
Yeah.
So give us an example. Halftime of this game, it's 45-45, I believe was the score.
Yeah.
You're tied up. You're going in. Your game plan is or is not working. What kinds of things would Colin be saying to you? What kinds of things would you be saying to your guys in this game?
I'm pretty sure at halftime of that game, he was telling me we needed to go no catch on Platt. And just me looking at it, obviously we're in the game still at halftime because we make a lot of threes in the first half, right? Mm-hmm. But I think you roll into halftime anytime you're tied with a team that's, a little bit better than you, you're probably feeling pretty good at it. I think for me, I would have liked us to get inside a little bit more, get to the free throw line to hopefully neutralize their size a little bit. So I think, it's easy to panic at halftime too. So it's kind of a delicate balance. And I think that's why you got to have a really good relationship with your assistants, and you got to be able to take criticism as a head coach, especially, when you're on a small staff, and you're the head coach and there's only one other opinion, you guys got to really make sure that you're either A, always on the same page, or B, you're willing to, go back and forth with each other a little bit for the betterment of everybody. And I think, we were able to do that for the most part, and obviously not always, because sometimes I'll just go with what I felt was right for right or wrong. But I think, anytime you go into halftime, you look at the box score, you try to figure out who's playing well, right? Who's going to continue to give us the best opportunity to win. Just someone who didn't necessarily play well in the first half, but's been consistent for you for a long time. Are you going to continue to ride him in the second half? Does he give you the best chance to win? I think there's a lot that goes into it. Obviously, in this game, we wanted to come out of halftime, do a better job on Platt, and do a better job, not turning the ball over. I mean, I think we had a lot of turnovers in this game, if I'm right, maybe 10 or 17 or something like that. So I think for me, those are the two kind of areas of focus.
Love it. I put some stuff in the chat because I didn't want to interrupt you, but I also don't want to forget my train of thought on these three things. You mentioned the lineups before in terms of having the right guys on the floor and tracking it while you're there. Do you script out your lineups, or are you doing part of it on feel?
So we go into the game with a plan. The plan, I'm a little bit old school. For me, the plan gets scrapped a lot just because I think there is some feel to it. If a dude makes 4 threes in a row, I'm not taking him out of the game because it's his turn in the rotation. I'm just not. So I think, that plays into it a little bit. I think box score, I always take it with a grain of salt. I think there's obviously you can tell if a guy plays well in the box score, but sometimes it can also be a little bit misleading as well. I think, so it all goes into it. I think the lineups, though, players win games ultimately. So being able to understand what guys can you put on the floor that give you the best opportunity to win. And I think there's more to that than plus minus and all that stuff. But
well, I would agree. And I'm sorry to jump in, but I would also say that if Brandt is the right guy today, it doesn't necessarily mean that he's the right guy tomorrow, right? He might be playing against somebody who bothers him in one game, and he might be playing against somebody else that he thinks is soft and he can manhandle in the other one, right? They're definitely things that you have to observe and see. It's not always on the box, but you did mention the box. What's sort of important to you on the box when you grab it? What are you looking at first, second?
I'm really looking for shot quality. Are they taking, how many shots are they taking one? Especially, say somebody's 1 of 8 at halftime, right? Well, are they 1 of 8 on good shots that they normally make, or are they 1 of 8 on shots that have no chance of going in? So I think that plays into it, because I think you can have a bad half statistically speaking, but not necessarily, in terms of the looks you're getting and that type of stuff. Rebounds and turnovers for me, if we have a guy that's 8 to 10 rebound a game guy for us, and he has 1 rebound and a half, that's a problem for him. If we have a guy that turns it over once or twice a game and he has 4 turnovers at halftime, that's a problem for me. And it's not a problem that, hey, we're not going with this guy. It's a problem of, are we doing the right things to put this guy in the position he needs to do to perform? And if we are, then yeah, he might not be playing. But if we're not, then it's what can we change to make sure that we're getting everything we can out of it.
So here's one that I just thought of that I don't think I've ever asked on this show before. Will you ever ask the guy directly? Like, as a, for instance, you said, hey man, you average 8 rebounds a game on the defensive side and you've got 1 today. Yep. What's up? Like, is this guy just so much better than you? Are you feeling low? Talk to me. Will you ever actually just get into that with them?
Never that like specific, not in front of the team at least. Now I might walk out, and if he's on the bench stretching or whatever before halftime, I might ask him like, hey man, you good? Whatever. But I'm a big believer in asking the guys what they see out there. So our halftime, just to give you a picture of what it looks like, the guys go into the locker room, right? Lots of emotion early on. Me and my assistant, unless I'm just super pissed coming off the floor, if we screw something up, I might chase them in and rip them for 30 seconds. But then I go back out. I give them the first, 4 or 5 minutes. Right? Me and my assistant are talking, trying to figure out, what adjustments do we need to make, who's going to say what, and then my assistant goes in. He actually talks to the team first, gives them 2 or 3 things just to kind of give him some development and talking to the team, letting him present some things that he sees, giving him a voice with the guys. I think that was one thing I learned.
I love that, by the way.
From Ted Albert at Indiana Tech, my last year there. He empowered the coaches to do that. So I took that with me to Holy Family. Then I come in. First thing I ask is the guys what they see before I say anything that I already have. Right. So they get to give their input. I take it to heart a little bit. I think it gives them ownership in what's going on and gives me an idea of some things that they're seeing on the floor that they find to be important. Right. And then I give them what I see. And then when we go back out, they warm up. If I think they brought up a really good point when they're talking about it in the locker room, I may address it in the huddle right before they go back out on the floor or whatever. If we want to throw a little wrinkle in, or they saw a play they think might work really well, or they're getting hurt on cross screens, maybe we switch our coverage on it or whatever. But I always like to do that. I think it gave the players, ownership in the midst of the game of the things we were doing and how they may be able to make a small adjustment. And we had a guy on our team, Taylor Harper, who was a little bit older. Him and Thomas were both older, actually, kids, and just understood, I think, what leadership looks like from a player standpoint. And so having those 2 guys in the locker room was a huge asset to our program. And just being able to frame those things when I ask, what do you guys see? Being able to frame it the right way, I think is really big for a player to be able to do too. If you say, what do you guys see? And the kid's like, well, coach, your ball screen coverage sucks. We're getting torched on it. Well, that's going to make me mad. But, if I ask and Taylor's like, coach, they're killing us on the hedge. Can we, contain hedge or whatever? Can we go under, whatever, something like that. So.
Love it. And then my last one that I have question wise is just simply, do you do anything after the game is done where you compare the results to what your game plan was, whether it's something that you write up or film that you deliver to the guys or whatever, where it's like, okay, this was an execution problem, or, the game plan was off. It was off because of X, Y, Z in it type deal.
Yeah. So I've never written anything up and give it to the guys. I've heard stuff on a lot of people that do that and do it well. And it's intriguing to me to consider if I ever get an opportunity to be a head coach again. Right. We do a lot of film post game with the guys. Typically for us, after a game, they're off the next day. usually film in the evening. Gives everybody a little bit of time to settle down, gives me time to settle down and evaluate, and then 20 to 30 minutes of film session of, 5 to 10 things that I think we did poorly. And then transition from that immediately into what we did well and what can we do better. Even though we did it well, what can we continue to build on? And I think I did it for 2 reasons. One, I don't like to dwell on the past much. Even if we were successful, I did it the same way. If we won the game, I did it the same as if we lost the game. I think being able to bury it and move on to the next, especially, in the midst of our season with quick turnarounds and everything, that was important for me. But 2, I think just in the midst of trying to build the program from where it was to where I wanted it to be, I really didn't want to dwell on negatives. So it was, we need to show our negatives. We need to highlight them. I need to also show you the progress we're making, the things we're doing really, really well. And these are the things we need to continue to build on. And so being able to piece those 2 things together, I guess in a harmonious way, if that makes sense, is difficult, but I think that's the way we tried to do it.
Love it. That's all I got question-wise. I'm going to move into a bit of film. As I said to you before, I'll play each clip a couple times. Just try and bear with me here. The first time, just let it play through. Second time, I'll try to describe for anybody who might be listening and not watching. And then the third time, just all you tell me what you see, how you would fix or what you would do different, anything like that. So first one, and we're good with size, playback speed, all that here.
Oh, yeah.
All right, perfect. So first one's your first play of the game. I'll let it run through. You can get a look at it. And then I will try with a description. So we got the jump. We move into the offensive left side of the floor. And when we come in, it's a horn set. Off this horn set, we enter to the right forward. And it looks like basically horns flex to me. We used to call this Texas at the school that I was at. Don't get anything on the first side. Get a pin down on the second side and reverse the ball. And we shoot sort of semi-contested 3 against them for the first play of the game. Talk to me about what you see, what you like, what you were trying for, options in the set, anything along those lines.
Yeah, so horns flex for us, obviously we're looking for, if we can hit this first flex cut, great. I thought, obviously not open. Perfect world for us, he's curling this, right? They chase. We really want him to curl that to the nail hole, get into the paint. Nico, number 12 here, is our best athlete. I'd like to see him wait on this screen a little bit more. He does an okay job. Brandt should be sprinting down to it. If he waits just a little bit more, we get that screen at the second, third hash. Nico curls it into the logo, and he's got an easy shot. I think I'm not perfectly thrilled with that shot, but I think that's a shot Nico made enough times for us throughout the course of the year that I'll live with it. Early in the possession, 14 on the clock, not perfect, but he's in decent rhythm. So I think obviously we probably could get a better one. I wish he would have curled it though, looking at it, just because that's how the play is designed anyway.
So. I hear you. So when your first play of the game counts as an ATO, I suppose. When you draw something up like this or tell your guys we're in horns flex, will you tell them that we're specifically looking for whatever, or will you let them run through it and try and find the best option for themselves?
Yeah, I'm letting them run through it and find the best option. When we put a play in for the first time, we're talking through, here's our first look, here's our second look, here's our third look, whatever, however many looks there are.
Right.
And with our style, we're looking for the first, we call them good plus shot that we can get. Obviously, you want a great shot every possession, but if you can get a good plus shot, we want to make sure we don't turn it down, because you may never get another shot as good during the other course of the possession. So if we got a shot that we feel like we take a lot in practice, and we take a lot of shots off pin downs. So obviously I prefer him not to take the dribble right before it, because that means his feet weren't perfectly set coming off the pin down. But I think that's part of giving your guys freedom, and you can run plays, but they got to understand how to play too. So spending time on that and really I say understanding how to play. Like, I think that's really broad. It's more of understanding how to play in your plays, if that makes sense. You know, how do
That
you
makes perfect sense to me because I comment sort of towards that. It's like, and I'm sorry to jump in, but like a lot of coaches will say like, oh, now you're playing basketball, but it's like you've got to play basketball within the confines of what we're giving. Like there are certain things in here that would totally just blow up everything. And then there's other things in here where it's like, all right, get to the empty side here with handoff and roll, or like basketball action sequences that should follow other things that make sense.
For sure.
Next one is their first play. This is just an attack of the left slot, a handoff. There's a pin down on the opposite side of the floor. They reverse the ball, they punch it, and then we get a little drop step hook shot. He actually ends up making it. Talk to me about the way you play it. Talk to me about if you have like the idea that this is who they're going to go to. This is the matchup they're going to attack. And talk to me about post counters. Do you decide to double at some point? Do you come from high, low, any of that fun stuff?
No doubt. Well, we try not to double the post too much if we don't. In a perfect world, Nico wouldn't be entirely lazy on this clip and front the post like he's supposed to. So he should be high side when the ball's in the middle third.
Right.
Locked in on the big's inside foot. Pat should be able to then load up and chase Platt off of that down screen, and Nico slides into an easy front. Obviously, we blow the coverage, and this will be something we talk about. Everybody else pretty decent on the possession. Pat's a little bit late on Platt there, but it only takes one guy to mess up an assignment on defense, and if you do, the whole team pays. And Nico blew what, in my opinion, there should have been an easy front on a good post player. And if he does that, then we're talking about something late in the shot clock for them, which would be, a win for us on the ATO.
So the other players off ball, when the ball is punched into the post, what are your teaching points for them?
Kind of depends on us, personnel based. If they're a Curry, they're closer. If they're a George, they're about halfway. If they're a Rondo, they're digging hard. And Brandt is about halfway. He's on a post. I think Byron is probably okay just because we teach. Byron's the guy on the baseline at the bottom. We teach to not be inside the big so that you don't get pinned in for a kick out or a skip. So Taylor's probably, I think he's guarding a Rondo, so he's probably coming in the right spot. But, not horrible. Pat's opened up, split halfway, which is exactly what we teach. So, I think from that standpoint, it's okay. Just blew the front, which if you do that and you let a good post player catch it on the block, he's going to score it, 65% of the time. So
yeah. I'm bigger than you. Give me the ball. It's like, it's always an important part. This was one I liked. This was you guys. I forget to mention when I started. BD, you run a clinic on some horns and Iverson sets throughout this game and throughout your season. It looks like this was one that I liked. This was just an Iverson flare action. So for anybody listening, the ball starts at the point. There's an Iverson cut over top from the offensive left to the offensive right side of the floor. And then the other forward sets a flare. We lob it to the basket. We get a nice little lob in there. It's beautiful. Talk to me about, the set and any options that are play after the play if you don't get this first one.
Sure. So this is the first option in the play. If we don't get this option, it turns into the guy who sets the flare popping, and then we're into stagger away. So if Byron doesn't get that lob, he's touching the block, he's getting back out to the wing for the reversal, and then we're into two staggers. But that's what I talk about, the guys understanding. Nico sees the guy gets hit, he throws it up. There's no help back there because there's no one else on the backside, which is, you talk about our horns and Iverson. We've got, I'm not an X's and O magician by any means. We've got a couple different series we run. Our horn series had about 5 plays in it. This was, Iverson, we called it our Philly series. It had about 4 or 5 plays in it, and a couple other box sets that have about 4 or 5 plays in it. Other than that was our motion. So just getting our guys to understand these plays and how to execute them was important for us.
Love it. This was another one that I liked. I called it a box set Chicago. Basically, it looks like you set up in a box set, ball goes to the offensive right elbow. There's a cut over top. So pin down handoff game, which is the Chicago action that I would call, but they curl the first one or twirl, whatever you want to call it. Comes for the handoff. And then on the help side of the floor, we're into a stagger. And then he curls that, gives it back. And now we're into play after play stuff, picks up the N1 with the up fake pump. So talk to me about it.
So this is our box set. We call this our flip series. So this flip twist. Nico's twisting the pin down. Byron's coming off. And this should be double single. So Pat messes this up. 23 should actually be coming off a single pin down on the other side from our big. As soon as Nico passes his shoulder, he should be flying out the other side. So we have options on both sides of the floor. But, we get a good option. And I don't think that's part of basketball. You don't always have to be perfect. You just got to cut hard and you got to set screens. And I think Taylor does a good job here on the second screen in the stagger. His job is to clean it up. And, I think he does that, gets a piece, and Nico's able to get in and kick it out. And Byron makes a play that probably won't be called a foul this year anymore because it's the NBA rules.
Getting hard and suffering on these ones right now. When he attacks the nail here, and there's heavy nail help, and he makes this beautiful kick. What do you want him doing? What's the exit cut strategy for him? It looks like he thinks about screening for a second and kind of ends up in no man's land. What would be your teaching points for him?
Ideal, he would be getting out low to the ball side, probably corner, under the big or over the big, whatever the fastest way he can get out to pull that guy out of the way. I think if he clogs it up, stands there and clogs it up, it's clogged up, right? If he backs back out to the same side he just came from, his guy stays in help and he clogs it up. So the only way to able to open up the lane for Byron to drive left, initially Byron can drive right away, right? There's nobody in help.
Right.
If Nico cuts out and takes his guy with him, now there's a double gap for Byron to drive left towards the nail as well. So perfect world, he'd keep going. Out, through the second or third hash is what we typically try to do.
Love it. Next one is a defending in transition one. So you guys miss a little baby hook on the block. They bust out. Ball moves to the offensive right side of the floor, up to the wing, back to the slot. There's a reverse. And then they end up just sort of with what looks like the same idea as an empty side attack. Basically, he plays against a long closeout from the nail. He gets through the nail, and then you guys help, I guess, from the low man on the ball side. That's a beautiful little pocket pass, drop off for a dunk. Clean it up for me, coach.
Yeah, difficult, in transition, right, with shooters. So I think Platt here is running up the right side, so we do a good job covering him up, not giving him an open three. Do a poor job pointing and matching, I think, in transition. So, Pat, if you run it back a little bit, I think this is where the play goes wrong. So we teach flooding the ball side. So ball's coming up. I think we do a pretty good job flooding the ball side. Where Pat gets caught is instead of running to the weak side like he's supposed to, or really running to his gap on the weak side like he's supposed to, he ball chases a little bit because Nico does a bad job. Number 12, the guy kind of splitting no man's land right here, guarding nobody. If he communicates, he's in the gap. Pat can now go weak side, and instead of having, basically have two guys guarding one here, and Pat gets caught in a long closeout, running another Curry off the line, gets beat middle. And then, you can't get driven from the slot in college basketball. Most teams either help. I would say 99% of the teams help from the bottom guy on the opposite side. And when you get driven from the slot, that guy doesn't exist. So it's a difficult help situation, and drop-offs become pretty easy.
Yeah. And would you, with your principles, preferred to have helped from the opposite short corner, I suppose?
Yeah, should have been the other guy on the bottom's help, technically. Yeah.
And then on this closeout here, as you mentioned, he's closing another Curry, but he gets beat over the nail. Would you influence this in an ideal world? Perfect world, we're sending baseline on everything. Now that's really hard to do from that area on the floor, which is, that closeout for us where he's at would be butt to the basket, not necessarily influencing one way or direction, but
if you get beat anywhere, it should be to the baseline in our defense. We're kind of old Dick Bennett ball line stuff.
Right.
So if you do get beat anywhere, it should be to the baseline. But, when you're running a curry off in our closeouts, and we talk about this, obviously you're trying to run them off any way you can to not give up a rhythm three. And this isn't a great run off by Pat, to be honest. The kid's a right-handed player, I believe. So you should be running them off on the inside anyway. But, we just don't execute very well in transition. And I think if Nico does a good job, as soon as Taylor takes Platt, which is the ball three on this pass, freeze it there, boom. Nico should be talking and pointing, telling Pat, I got ball. Pat then doesn't run all the way over here to this slot. He can kind of settle in his gap around the nail hole, and we'd be in good shape.
Love it. I was just going to say, as you were saying, you think you were probably beat somewhere around here.
As soon as he caught it, as soon as he catches it, and Nico, the guy closest to your mouse, doesn't communicate that he has the next closest, you're already beat in transition.
Love it. Another one I liked, Horns setup. We call this Horns traffic on the York women's team that I was on. Basically, it's just an enter to the offensive right forward. You come sort of shallow with your guard that put it in, get a piece of the opposite forward, hoping for that switch. We get the entrance and the finish here. The low man does help. Talk to me about options if you don't get this entry, how frequently you do get this entry, and then also talk to me about the pass out here to this gentleman versus the layup against the low man, what you teach in terms of good versus great and finishing versus kicking.
For sure. I think I'll talk on the finish first, I guess, just because I'm old school. I think if you got something at the rim with your big on a little, I'll take the layup. And I'll tell you why, because I think the big at the rim, I think I said it earlier, if you let a big catch it easy on the block, it's about 65% of the time for a talented big. I think Brian's talented. I think if you kick it out to the shooter in the corner, at best, it's 50% of the time. And I know an analytic guy will tell me that that's technically more points in the long haul or whatever, but I guess
How many guys are actually shooting 50%?
Yeah, I guess I'm too stubborn to not take the layup at the rim, so I'll take it. I think we probably get that look from the slot. I would guess this is maybe 2 or 3 of the entire season where you get that first look. This might have actually been the first time we ran this play all year, so I think you get it. A couple options here. This is our horns under. We can do horns under twist or regular horns under. I'm not sure what it is because we don't get to the next option. Byron can either pop, and we got a 2-man game with Byron driving a double gap down the elbow with, if a guy helps in from the corner off 30, he's kicking it out, or he's trying to get to the rim with the big shaping up, or Byron's coming back off a handoff with 12, kind of a redirect to get a dump in on the spin seal on the ball side. So it's a little bit weird. Looks like we're popping. We have hit the slot.
Wait, I'm disappointed. I'm sorry. Did you say spin steel instead of snowplow? Is that what happened there?
Well, they're two different things for me.
I know, but it was the closest I was gonna get.
I might see a snowplow later. I don't know. We might run one.
For anybody who's not in the joke, which is all of you, BD was the first one that I ever heard use that term. And I'm like, I'm Canadian. We don't use snowplow. I'm very disappointed in myself. What's going on here?
I bet you use it now because it's a great basketball term because everyone knows what a snowplow is.
Sure do. Sure do. So it's interesting to me that you said you might only get this a couple times a season. When I was at York on the women's side, we might actually get this once or twice a game.
See, I think so for me, I think that pass is difficult if the other team does a good job. Like if the point guard bumps the big at all, that specific pass is difficult. Where we get the entrance the most is screen, boom, stop it. As soon as he comes off, boom. If we pop and we throw it in the slot, if our big does a good job sealing, we get the entrance the most from the other slot, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Once the lane's clearing out.
So in that scenario, I'll draw for anybody who's taking a look and not hearing. If I've got it correctly, he's saying we get this pass And then this big in here will
Yeah.
sort of seal somewhere about there.
Yeah.
We might get either this pass
Yeah.
or a one more out here and then in type deal.
Yeah. Or drive down the slot to draw, help, and kick.
But on this slot one that's in, what would you teach the big in terms of that seal? Would you actually have them drive him back up the lane to have more space to throw it in?
It depends how they guard it. You know, if they slide under and he can leg whip over top, great. We'll seal on top. If they get caught on the high side and you can spin and keep them above you and walk them back up the lead line and we got to go over the top, we're willing to do that too. But it's kind of a read on the bigs part of how they defend it and understanding how to pivot once he gets it in the post.
Love it. The next one, of course, is a staple on my show. So they miss a little post. You guys bust out, attack the offensive left slot, one more it, corner three. Question is, transition threes, yay or nay in your world?
First good plus shot, right? So
There you go.
if we're out in transition, we get a wide open look from a good shooter on our team. That's a good plus shot for us. We might never get a look that good again in the possession if we pull it back out. So I'm good with it. Ty was a freshman for us. I think he made like 6 threes or something in this game. So I think it's a good look for us.
Will it be a good look for you for all of your players? And if somebody who it is not, like how will you rein that in?
Be a good look for everyone on our team that puts in work. I know that's a generic answer, but if they get in the gym and they work on those shots and they consistently make those shots in practice or in a workout, you know, Coach Pujols calls it earning your license. You know, once you earn your license, you don't lose it typically, unless you completely stop getting in the gym. But you know, unless you're just like, if our 5-man was out there jacking that thing up, I'd probably be pretty mad. But I think for me, we gave up 95 points in this game, so that was one of the few stops we got. So give them the freedom to get out and play in transition is, I think, part of it. You got to give your guys confidence to take those shots when they're open and they're in rhythm. We practice that every day, sprinting the sideline, catching it, you know, below the wing on the deep wing, we call it, and shooting it in rhythm. I think that's a really good shot for Ty, especially.
For anybody who earns that license, though, they got to get in there and put in.
For anybody who plays that position for us, they shoot that shot so many times in the course of our workouts and our practice. You know, it's a great shot for us.
Love it. One more that I liked. It's another Horns set, as I said, Horns clinic here. So there's a screen as we go towards the offensive right slot, and then there's a stagger away. Don't get what we want out of the stagger, and now we're into sort of play after the play stuff. So the ball gets swung, and corner three or a deep wing three, I suppose. Talk to me about the set, not primary action, play after the play, all that stuff.
You know, horns up should be stagger. Hopefully we hit this guy in rhythm, should be a flare screen for the top guy to the corner. Horns downs, the opposite of that would be a pin down for the big to curl into the middle. So this is kind of a counter to the horns down, but they disrupted a little bit. We don't get it in rhythm to the guy off the stagger, so the play doesn't develop as fast as you would like, but we still do a good job of making the quick extra. And Taylor's still open because Huntington does a poor job on the screen there, in my opinion.
Love it. This was just an easy one. This is defending a top ball screen here. Balls just sort of to the left of the rim line, and he's allowed to reject, comes down on the single side, little drop off to the big who finishes, in my opinion, and one. Clean it up for me in an ideal world. Yeah,
I mean, Byron needs to make him use the screen. I think that's Byron. Ty does actually a good job on the guy in the corner. It doesn't help off the ball side corner, which is really hard to do when you see your teammate get smoked, which puts our big in a difficult position. And that goes back to what I said earlier. You can't get driven from the top slot or the middle of the floor in college basketball and have success. It's just difficult to do.
Is there any element teaching wise that talks about, like, so I would call this screen twisted, right? Where he approaches on the right. There may have even been a screen right call, and then he sets it on the left. Is there any sort of teaching element as to how you would deal with a screen that is twisted on the approach in terms of how you want them to force them to use it?
Yeah, it's hard. Especially if the big switches it or twists it well, which in my opinion here doesn't look like he twists it well at all. It looks like he's coming up for the left the whole time. So if I had to guess, probably poor communication on our side as well.
Right.
But not much excuse to not make him use the screen, whether he does it or not. Is it hard? Yes. But is it your job if you're guarding the ball to flip your feet and make him use it? Also, yes, and how we play. So,
Brandt, you want me to pause? You want to take a second?
oh, you're good. She took her pacifier, I think. So,
all right. Someday she's going to look back and be like, I was on a basketball podcast once,
no doubt.
First set of the second half for you guys. Were you looking at attacking anything in particular was basically just my question. So basically it just ends up with a paint touch 3, but for anybody who's listening, we sort of walk it up. We get an exchange, not really a pin down. Ball moves to the left wing. We get a UCLA, I guess. Doesn't really have much contact on it. And then the ball gets swung and attacked, and they pull in from what would be becoming the new ball side as their guy they're helping off, and you end up with the corner 3 or the deep wing 3, whatever you want to
do. And you missed it. You didn't even call out the snowplow from the big there.
Oh, I missed it. Darn.
So this is our UCLA special. So UCLA screen.
There it is. Gap. Oh, I did miss it. Wow.
Big pushing across. They help off the ball side corner. That's exactly what we want. They either don't help and we got a layup, or at least a one-on-one at the rim, or they do help like they do here. Byron gets the foot to the nail and kicks it out quick, and we get an open 3. So perfect execution. Just missed the shot, unfortunately.
So the design here, and forgive me for being slow, but on the reversal, you're teaching that snowplow for the exact thing that you're saying you want the ball side help to get to pull in.
Yeah, we want to create the double gap. So our big takes their big out of the position to be able to help it all.
Yep.
And then the ball side corner now has a decision to make. Is he going to help or is he going to stick with his guy?
Beautiful. I love it. I called it attacking up to touch here. Screen coverage where their big gets up to the line of the screen. And I just wondered if you had any sort of teaching points. I mean, for anybody who's listening, just basically looks like a normal spread pick and roll type deal. Offensive left slot. Brandt talked about not being able to get driven from that slot, which they sort of do. But what if any teaching points do you have for attacking a big who's not high hedging, just kind of showing up to touch, whatever you want to call it at this point, gets downhill, makes a beautiful pocket pass, and we get the finish here.
Going crazy, but we got her now, I think. There we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, I think, can you run it or ask your question one more time?
Sure. So really, I just want to know sort of your teaching points on this spread in terms of how you attack. You can see my cursor. This big that is at the line of the screen. He's not high hedging. He's just kind of showing or up to touch or flatting, whatever you're corralling, whatever term you guys use for being at the line of the screen. What do you teach for attacking that? And then the second half that I didn't ask the first time, which would be an add-on question, is how do you feel about pocket passes that are not bounces or lobs but are straight through?
If it's not a bounce or a lob and it's straight through, it better get through.
Yeah.
I think our guard doesn't change. He's attacking the big's top hip, and if he happens to be flat, it's the outside hip. And if he can beat it, we're in pretty good shape. And I think Byron does a good job here. It's a quick hedge. We would term this from them. He gets the big to open his hip, which on our defense, we try to teach our big not to open their hip and get turn, which is what their big does. And as soon as that happens, the roll becomes available. I think Huntington misses an assignment here with their backside guy. Should have probably tagged the roll here, and they would have been in good shape. He doesn't, and we're able to get it through and get a decent look.
It actually looks like their ball defender hits their screen defender. I didn't really notice that before.
Yeah.
He's trying to get over, and then, like you said, the hip is turned, so the two run into each other. Advantage created. Tag missed. Forget it. Defending their baseline out of bounds. This was one that I found interesting. This is late game. I'm wondering if you have the set. So this is about 12 minutes left in the game. Basically, it looks like a I don't know, 2 at the elbow and 2 at the blocks set, and they fake like they're popping and then set like a veer back screen, and then gentleman cuts out to the corner. I think that's a pretty contested shot. It doesn't really look like they made much contact on the screen, but it's enough for him to get it off and make a big time three. So do you have it? Did you play it the way that you wanted to? What do you see there?
I think we play it bad from the beginning. Taylor, number 4. So Pat is the guy that ends up contesting the shot with the dreads. Our other defender should be, can you run it back to the beginning? So not Pat. He's in a good spot. Our other defender should be locked up on his guy. Right now, he's in the way. He essentially screens his own player by not being where he's supposed to be. So Pat has to go around him.
Yeah.
Instead of just being able to lock this and trail it the whole way. If Taylor's in the right spot, I think we're in a really good spot on this play where Nico doesn't have to help. We're no help on baseline out of bounds. You got yours. So
just clarity, you want that there, basically.
Yeah, exactly. We should all be locked in with contact, forcing them to go the direction that we dictate. And we aren't. Taylor's not in the right spot. Pat has to go around him, and he's late on the trail on one of the best shooters in the country, which everything opens a good look for him. So
yeah, this is a hard shot. I mean, regardless of what I said, this is still pretty tough shot to make.
No doubt.
This was another box set that I just thought was pretty interesting. There's kind of like an Iverson cut over top of the box set from the offensive right elbow to the left wing, and then there's a cross screen underneath, and we post up on that. It's pretty wide on the post. And then there is a diagonal cut out and a pin down for a 3 on the same side. Thoughts about this? How do you feel you guys ran it? What are options on it? I really like this set a lot, actually.
We get the shot we want. So boom, boom, deep post, freeze it. The passer there is actually supposed to be sprinting in to be the first screen in the stagger. So that's a stagger coming back against the grain. We mess it up a little bit. Right. Chase is the kid, or Jace is the kid that ends up shooting the shot. He gets a little bit antsy and comes out early. As soon as you enter it to the post, deep short corner, which is what we want, coming back in for a stagger against the grain. The passer should be the first screen, the big cleaning it up. And it's a really difficult action to guard because you don't see it often.
Would I be correct in what I've drawn there?
Yep, exactly.
And wow, do you get slips on that at all?
We do. Yeah. It's just a weird angle for everybody. So
it's definitely something that, like you said, you just don't see often, right? Like a ball side post up and a ball side stagger coming out. And like, I'm sure you often get guys with a deer in headlights look like, I don't know what to do here.
No doubt. A lot.
Like it. This one, I just put in defending their post touch. So it was off of an offensive rebound. I almost kind of forget this clip. I'm sorry. We throw it in, and then, oh, yeah, this is the little give and go type action. Yeah. So basically just a clean it up type deal. So they throw it in, and you guys dig down, and they cut off of it, and there's nothing on the other side, no high or low man type deal, and he gets a running dunk down the center. So where would you help from ideal? Would you even be digging down? Just, talk to me about how you would clean that up.
I mean, poor defense, obviously, on the dig. Shouldn't be one going until the bounce. Anyway, 2, he should be halfway. He loses sight of his guy. I'm assuming this guy sees his butt, so he goes. But we should be helping off the backside. I think our guy on the bottom there should be about halfway on the midline, what we call it. And if he is, he takes a charge right in the middle of his chest.
got two more. Are you good? Is she gonna make it? Yeah, I'll give it 1 second. You muted yourself, Brandt. Sorry. Um, give me 1 second here, everybody, as Brandt just gets ready. Sorry, sometimes.
You're good. Sorry.
No, you're good, man. I fully understand. You know, a lot of people don't realize that, like, coaching, a lot of us are doing this with our kids now too, right? So we gotta.
My wife is also a dance coach, so our schedules are pretty crazy.
Yeah, I bet. This was just an interesting baseline on our balance. The reason I like it is that it's like a box set entirely on the ball side of the floor. So
Yep.
sort of like a diagonal screen, shuffle cut coming off, a pop in behind, and then that shuffle cut screen setter comes off of a screening action towards the corner. Don't get anything out of it and end up just playing, but really I wanted to walk through the box set more than anything.
Yeah.
You end up with a paint touch and a kick, but you know, do you
Really?
run it often to get what you want out of it? What's the first look, et cetera?
Pretty much our only, I think we have two plays other than this setup. So this is our box, how we line up for all of them. And it's a read. I don't really call it. I call box, and the guy under the basket dictates the play based on he can go screen up, he can go screen diagonal, or he can go screen out. I think we execute okay. We don't get a very good screen on the pin in after the shuffle.
Right.
If you get a good screen there, the slip becomes more available, but we don't get anything and we hit the safety, which is kind of why he's out there. So, but yeah, I'm a big fan of, all of our plays kind of being disguised as looking the same. And a lot of them are just reads by our guys that I don't necessarily always call.
I love that. I love the masking. I mentioned it to you before we were recording, obviously. It's hard to scout when, you know, everything looks the same for sure. What sort of made you arrive at the box entirely being on the ball side of the floor?
Yeah, so it's offset and high. I think it just gives us spacing on shortening the pass to get it in. I think the screens we want are good to be or better positioning, I guess, a little bit stretches the defense out away from the basket to give us more room on cutters to the rim. Whereas if we had the box set on the lane, there's a lot more traffic in the lane to where, I don't know if you can run it back to the first cut where the guy comes off the diagonal. If we get a good screen on this and they're no help, if the guy goes with our safety guy and their guy guarding the ball doesn't do a good job, if we get any contact at all, it's a layup. So, because there's no traffic there. A lot of teams take that away with they put the guy under the rim, which is awesome because then if they do a bad job on the other screen, the slip is wide open if the defender on the ball doesn't do a good job. So,
and it becomes an easier pass too, right? Because there's no way you just drop it off.
Yeah.
Love it. I got one more for you. This is oh no, don't change that. There we go. So them shooting a free throw, there's 90 seconds left in the game. It's what's the score here? We are down 11 at this point, and we just get swing and a quick three out of it. So my question becomes, you cut it to 8, there's 90 seconds left. Did you want to start playing the foul game already, or did you want to sort of trust in your defense and get it back? You guys play with a longer shot clock than we do, and I know that this is a highly subjective theoretical question, but what are sort of like your thoughts on when to start playing that foul game and extending and all that?
Yeah, I think it's always a feel thing for me, but some of it is also based on how good a free throw shooting team the other team is.
Right.
A poor free throw shooting team, we probably foul right away. I think Huntington, it was a really, really good free throw shooting team. They were 20 of 23 in this game. So, I think we opted, I don't remember really, but I assume we probably opted to try to get a stop.
No, you went the other way. This is actually
Really?
Yeah, this is the possession before the intentional call or whatever,
Gotcha.
the unsporting call. So just for anybody who's listening, I actually really think that like the game was very winnable at this point. And then what happens is the gentleman who goes to foul in the eyes of the ref, commits an unsporting or an intentional, whatever you want to say, just wraps up a bit too much. And then sort of throws his hands at the call. So they get the 2, and then they get the 1 for the tech, and then they get the ball. And that was just the difference in the game, basically, right
Oh,
there.
no. Yeah, I do remember now. I thought the intentional foul call was, everybody knows you're trying to foul in the last minute of the game, and it definitely wasn't a hard foul. I think it was out by half court, so it wasn't anything crazy. So, but
Yeah, I
it
mean,
is what it is.
it's tricky. I know in FIBA, they're really trying to, like, they want to call that a lot, which makes it really hard to game plan type deal.
Yeah.
And I so often see refs let you get away with it. So it's like, all right, well, I don't really know how to draw the line here type deal. But as you said, it's a tribute to your program in terms of, like, at this point, you're 38 and a half minutes into the game. You're at 8 points and you're within striking distance, in my opinion, because you have some momentum. And it just sort of takes the air out of the tires. I mean, it's an unfortunate ending to what was a great game, in my opinion.
For sure.
But I will wind it down there unless anybody has any questions. Sir, I want to take a second and, I always give thanks, give tribute to coaches who jump on, coaches who listen, anybody who listens. Really, I appreciate you. But, dude, overall, just like man to man, friend to friend, like, I really appreciate you. You're somebody that I've learned a lot from over the past year. Always take the time to answer, always willing to help, and we need more of it in the world. So thank you. Thanks to the little one for bearing with us and getting through. Appreciate you as well. But just thanks so much for jumping on, man.
She did pretty good. It's her first time on TV, and to be on a nationally accredited show like Run It Back is, there's not very many shows out there with, like, what is it, 79 episodes or something anymore? They don't make them that long.
I think it's that. What's crazy to me is you say nationally, I've done 18 countries of basketball now. I think that's the craziest thing to me, is just to see coaches from all over, like, how different and how similar certain things are. And the quality of coach such as yourself, I mean, you don't give yourself credit sometimes. I know you like to joke with self-deprecating humor, but, like, the way that I have become a better coach from listening to people such as yourself throughout this journey has been remarkable to me. It's just been an awesome experience. So thank you.
Man, don't sell yourself short. There's definitely a lot of people in the industry that have learned stuff from yourself, and especially from being able to jump on the shows that you're putting out every other day or so here on Rising Coaches. It have been really valuable. I know during quarantine for me, the people that you had on and I was able to hear speak, and just the relationship we've been able to form genuinely through this and our group chat, and being able to talk and all that type of stuff has been awesome. And obviously, I'm a huge fan of you, and I'm really waiting to see everything in the future for both of us. So appreciate you, man.
Yeah, I can't wait till our daughters get to play in person, actually.
Mine's gonna be.
That being said, we'll stop patting each other on the back. Thanks to everybody who tunes in. I hope you guys continue to find value. I'll stop the recording there. BD, man, just such a pleasure. Really appreciate you. Thank you.
No doubt. Thanks.